The early morning sun had just begun to warm the quiet backyard, spilling soft golden light across the dew-covered grass. Birds rustled lazily in the branches overhead, and the world felt gentle, as if waking slowly on purpose. Daniel stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, letting the warmth settle into his hands, trying to calm the heaviness inside him, the thoughts he never voiced, the memories he still couldn't hold without flinching. Beside him, Willow, the family's calm, amber-eyed dog, sat unusually still. She wasn't watching the birds or the neighbor's fence or anything most dogs would track. Instead, her gaze was fixed on him. Quiet. Focused. Almost understanding. A soft whine slipped from her, delicate enough that Daniel almost missed it. Then she rose, walked to the edge of the yard, and paused, glancing back at him with a gentle insistence. Her tail didn't wag. She didn't bark. She simply asked with her eyes. Daniel lowered his mug. "What is it, girl?" Willow took another step toward the old oak tree that stood behind the property, a tree Daniel had avoided for months. A tree heavy with memories he hadn't been ready to face. He shook his head, unsure, but Willow waited, patient, steady, hopeful. Something in her posture, the softness, the purpose, tugged at his chest. Slowly, almost involuntarily, Daniel stepped off the porch. Willow led him forward with quiet certainty, pausing every few steps to make sure he followed. Her movements weren't playful or random. They were intentional. Tender. As if she understood the part of him he kept hidden. What she was guiding him toward was something that would begin to heal him in ways he never imagined. The morning rose slowly, as if the world wanted Daniel to breathe before the day truly began. A thin layer of dew coated the backyard, glimmering in the early sunlight. The air felt cool, but warm enough to hint at comfort. It was the kind of morning that made a person pause, if only to remember what peace once felt like. Daniel stepped onto the wooden porch with his usual quiet steps. His coffee steamed softly in his hands, drifting upward like a small prayer he hadn't learned how to say aloud. He exhaled. The world answered with silence. Behind him, the screen door creaked open, and Willow patted out, her nails tapping lightly against the wood. The sound was gentle, rhythmic, familiar enough to ease something in his chest. Willow didn't run ahead the way she usually did. She didn't chase birds. Didn't nose around the yard. She simply walked to his side and sat, steady, calm, almost perfectly still. Daniel glanced down. "Morning, girl." Willow lifted her eyes to him, those soft amber eyes that always seemed to see deeper than he expected. Something in her expression made him pause. She wasn't excited. She wasn't restless. She was watching him. Not like a pet waiting for breakfast, but like someone waiting for a moment to speak. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. He wasn't used to this kind of quiet attention, at least not anymore. "It's too early for whatever you're thinking," he murmured, trying for a smile. Willow didn't blink. Didn't move. Just held his gaze, patient, present, warm. The coffee felt heavier in his hand. He stepped to the edge of the porch, letting the sunlight touch him. Willow followed with slow, deliberate steps. Her tail did not wag. Her ears were relaxed, not alert. Her body language said one thing, unmistakably. "I am here because you need me." Daniel swallowed, a lump forming before he could stop it. He didn't talk much about what he was carrying. Grief wasn't something he shared freely, not even with himself. But Willow, somehow she always knew when the weight returned. She took a few steps toward the yard, then stopped. Turned back. Waited. Daniel frowned softly. "What's going on, girl?" Willow walked a little farther, toward the far end of the yard where the old oak tree stood. A tree with a thick, knotted trunk, and branches that stretched out like a sheltering canopy. A tree full of memories Daniel wasn't ready to touch. Willow paused again and looked back at him, eyes steady, warm, inviting, but not urgent. Almost like she was saying, "You don't have to hurry. Just follow when you're ready." Daniel's chest tightened. He forced another sip of coffee. The warmth didn't reach his hands the way it normally did. He cleared his throat. "You're acting strange today," he whispered. Willow lowered her head slightly, a soft acknowledgement, then lifted it again with quiet determination. She took another slow step toward the tree. Daniel froze. He stared at the oak, its silhouette gentle, its branches stirring in the morning breeze. The sound of leaves shifting felt almost like a memory breathing. He hadn't walked that way in months. He wasn't sure he could. Willow waited, motionless. Daniel felt the breeze slide across his face. He looked down at her, at the way her posture spoke without words. The dog wasn't trying to play. Wasn't curious. Wasn't restless. She was guiding. Daniel let out a shaky breath. Why today? His voice cracked before he could steady it. Why now? Willow stepped closer and nudged his hand. Softly. Gently. Almost apologetically. The touch stopped his thoughts in place. Her eyes were full of something he couldn't name, something tender, steady, knowing. Daniel felt his shoulders lower. He set his coffee cup down on the porch railing, letting it rest there, forgotten. Willow took one step back toward the yard. Paused. Waited again. Daniel nodded once, barely. Willow turned and began walking, slow, measured, looking back every few steps to make sure he followed. Daniel hesitated only a moment longer, then stepped off the porch. The grass bowed beneath his shoes, releasing the scent of morning earth. The closer he walked behind Willow, the warmer the air felt, as if sunlight itself was trying to hold him gently. He found himself whispering, barely audible, "I'm right behind you." Willow's ears flicked. She understood. They moved together through the quiet yard, man and dog, bonded by something silent and deep. With every step, Daniel felt the past stir, like pages fluttering open in a book he had sealed too tightly. Willow stopped again, halfway to the tree. She turned to him, her gaze soft but full of purpose. Daniel met her eyes. Something inside him shifted, not painfully, but like a door unlocking. Whatever Willow sensed, whatever she was guiding him toward, was waiting beneath that old oak. And Daniel knew, even before he reached it, that this morning had not happened by accident. Willow had chosen it. She had chosen him. And her quiet intuition was leading him toward something he might finally be ready to face. Willow didn't rush. She walked with a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if she understood that Daniel's steps were heavier than usual this morning. Each time she moved forward, she paused, glancing back with those steady amber eyes that held more patience than most people he knew. Daniel followed at a cautious distance, his strides measured. The grass brushed softly against his shoes. The air felt warmer now, or maybe his chest was just tight. He cleared his throat. "You really think I need a walk?" he murmured. Willow didn't answer, of course. She simply watched him, not like a dog waiting for a command, but like a quiet friend waiting for him to realize something on his own. There was something purposeful in her posture. Something intentional. Something almost guiding. Daniel ran his fingers through his hair, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "You're doing that thing again," he whispered. "The way you look at me like you know more than you should." Willow's ears lifted gently, hearing the softness in his voice. She took a few more steps, then stopped again. Her gaze remained fixed on him, warm, unwavering. Daniel paused, standing still in the early morning glow. He felt her attention like a hand resting lightly on his shoulder. He looked away for a moment, toward the distant fence line. "I'm fine," he said quietly. But even he didn't believe the words. Willow tilted her head, a subtle gesture, but enough to make his chest tighten. She had always been like this, gently intuitive, quietly attuned. She sensed more than the average dog ever should. Some days he wondered if she understood his silence better than humans understood his words. Daniel exhaled slowly and continued walking. The oak tree still stood far off, a white silhouette, too familiar, too heavy. But Willow kept the pace soft, never pushing him closer than he was ready to go. She moved only when he did. Stopped only when he hesitated. It felt like she was reading his heartbeat. They reached a patch of sunlight that spread across the yard like a warm blanket. Willow sat right in the middle of it, letting the light fall across her soft fur. Her eyes closed briefly, her breathing calm and even. Daniel approached, stopping a few feet away. "You always pick the warmest spots," he said gently. Willow opened her eyes and looked up at him again, and something about the look made him sit down beside her without thinking. He rested his elbows on his knees, letting the morning quiet settle around them. No cars. No phones. No noise. Just the wind, the sun, and Willow's steady companionship. She shifted closer, pressing her shoulder lightly against his leg. A wordless comfort. A simple reminder, you don't have to hold everything alone. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He swallowed hard, blinking away the sting at the corners of his eyes. "You're too good at this," he whispered. "Too smart, too gentle." Willow leaned in a little more, sensing the tremor in his voice. Her tail brushed the grass once, not a wag, just a small reassurance. Daniel let his hand rest on her head. Her fur was warm. Soft. Grounding. "You know, some days I really think you understand everything I don't say." Willow closed her eyes and leaned into his palm, accepting the weight of his touch with quiet grace. They sat like that for a long moment, letting the yard breathe around them. The old oak tree rustled in the distance, its branches whispering through the wind, not calling him, but reminding him it was still there, still waiting. Willow eventually rose to her feet, her movements slow and thoughtful. She circled once, twice, then stopped directly in front of Daniel, meeting his gaze with a look so steady it made his breath catch. She didn't bark. Didn't whine. Just watched. A conversation without words. Daniel let out a shaky laugh. "You're not letting this go, are you?" Willow took one small step back toward the oak. Then another. And looked at him again, not insisting, not demanding, just waiting. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands. He felt the resistance in his chest, the years of quietly avoiding certain memories, the ache that came with even glancing toward that part of the yard. "Not today," he whispered. Willow didn't move. Her eyes softened, almost pleading, but still gentle enough to let him choose. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, and something inside him loosened. Not fully, but enough for him to stand. He brushed off his jeans and took a slow breath. "Okay, maybe just a little closer." Willow's posture changed in an instant, not with excitement, but with relief. She waited for him to take the first step. When he did, she walked by his side instead of ahead of him. Close enough for him to feel her presence. Close enough to steady him. "Good girl," he said softly. She didn't react with tail wags or playful energy. She simply stayed near, calm, loyal, intuitive. With every step they took toward the oak, Daniel felt the quiet shift inside him, the way old memories stirred like dust in a beam of light. And Willow, sensing the tension in his breath, slowed her pace even further. Not pushing him. Not pulling him. Just walking with him. Daniel looked down at her, voice barely above a breath. "You really do know, don't you?" Willow lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze mid-stride. In that moment, quiet, brief, but profoundly felt, Daniel understood. She wasn't following him at all. She had been watching him. Guiding him. And somehow, she knew exactly where he needed to go next. The closer they moved toward the oak tree, the slower Daniel's steps became. Not because he didn't want to follow Willow, he did. But the air around that part of the yard always felt heavier. Like the memories lived there, waiting patiently, never demanding anything from him but never leaving either. Willow walked at his side, calm and steady. Her shoulder brushed his leg every few steps, as if reminding him she was there, grounding him. Daniel exhaled softly. "Feels like a long walk today," he murmured. Willow glanced up at him, not with playful curiosity, but with quiet understanding. That same warm focus, the same gentle insistence without pressure. Daniel noticed her breathing, slow, deep, relaxed. It made him slow his own breaths, matching her rhythm. It helped. They reached the midpoint of the yard, where the sunlight fell in a long diagonal stretch. Willow stopped and sat in the warm light, turning to face him. Daniel paused. "What now?" he asked softly. Willow held his gaze, still as stone, but not rigid. More like a lighthouse, steady and guiding in its own silent way. Daniel rubbed his palms on his jeans. "Are you sure about this?" Willow didn't move. She didn't need to. Her silence was the answer. Daniel took another step, then another. And Willow rose to join him, her movements gentle, careful, almost ceremonial. The oak tree loomed closer now, tall, rooted, familiar. Daniel felt the first quiet tug in his chest, that small ache that always came when he drifted near it. He slowed again. Willow slowed with him. Her head tilted slightly, listening to something deeper than sound. Listening to him. Daniel ran a hand over his face, sighing. "You feel it too, don't you?" Willow nudged his fingers with her nose, soft, warm, reassuring. Daniel's throat tightened. "I'm okay," he whispered. But Willow didn't believe him, he could see it in her eyes. She stepped ahead, just a few feet, then turned back. Waiting. Always waiting. Daniel swallowed. "All right," he said quietly. "I'll follow." He didn't realize he was shaking slightly until the breeze hit his skin. Willow noticed instantly. She moved closer, brushing against his leg again, grounding him with the simplest touch. They walked in silence for several more steps, the grass whispering around them. The old oak grew larger with every breath, its branches swaying gently in the morning wind. Daniel hesitated again, stopping just short of the sloped rise that led to the base of the tree. Willow stopped too. She turned to face him fully, eyes soft, warm, steady. That look, the one she only used on days when his heart felt too heavy to carry alone. Daniel let out a slow, uneven breath. "I haven't stood under that tree in. I don't even know." Willow stepped closer and rested her chin lightly against his hand. A touch full of patience. Full of trust. Full of quiet insistence. "You can do this." Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, letting the wind move through his hair. He felt Willow's weight beneath his palm, the warmth of her fur, the steadiness of her presence. It gave him strength he didn't know he still had. He nodded, barely, but enough. "Okay, let's go a little farther." Willow responded with the softest wag of her tail, just one gentle sweep through the grass, and then turned to lead him again. Not pulling. Just guiding. Each step felt like peeling back a thin layer of something he had wrapped around himself for months, maybe longer. The closer he came, the more he felt the air shift, not darker, not colder, just full of memory. Willow slowed again as they reached the rise. She looked back. Daniel stepped beside her. Together, they climbed the small slope. Only a few feet separated them from the base of the oak tree now. Daniel's breath trembled as he exhaled. His chest felt tight, but not painfully, more like something was trying to open inside him after staying closed too long. Willow stood beside him, unmoving. Her eyes fixed on him, not the tree. She wasn't leading him to the memory. She was leading him to himself. Daniel swallowed hard. "You really think I'm ready, huh?" Willow's tail lifted slightly, brushing the grass again, a tender reassurance. Daniel stepped forward until he was close enough to touch the rough bark if he reached out. He didn't. Not yet. The tree towered above him, branches rustling softly overhead. The light filtered through the leaves in warm, flickering patterns, almost like the tree was breathing along with him. Willow sat at his feet. Not urging. Just waiting. Daniel whispered, "I don't know if I can do this whole thing today." Willow leaned against his leg, a gentle press, steady and comforting. He placed a hand on her head instinctively. Her warmth answered for him. Maybe he didn't need to do everything today. Maybe just standing here, just facing the tree again, was enough for now. Willow seemed to agree. She didn't push him forward anymore. She just stayed close, her presence a quiet anchor. Daniel stared at the roots of the oak, breathing slowly, letting the moment settle. And in the morning silence, something inside him softened. He wasn't healed. Not yet. But he wasn't alone either. And Willow, with her patient steps and unwavering intuition, had brought him closer to the place where healing might begin. The tree wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning. Daniel stood beneath the oak tree's shadow, and for a moment, the world went quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. Not silent. Just still. Like the morning held its breath with him. Willow sat close to his leg, her warm presence grounding him in a space that felt both familiar and fragile. Daniel looked up into the branches, the way they spread outward like a canopy, filtering sunlight into soft, moving patterns. The tree looked the same as it always had, but he didn't. He swallowed, forcing a small breath. I used to come here every day, you know that? Willow's ears twitched slightly, acknowledging the shift in his tone. Daniel crouched down slowly, resting one hand on his knee. He traced a fingertip along a root that curled above the soil like an old, living scar. This tree, he said softly, it used to mean something different. The breeze moved gently through the leaves, making them whisper. He closed his eyes, letting the familiar sound settle into him. He could almost hear laughter in that whisper, distant, faint, carried in memory. He could almost see a small figure running circles around the tree, giggling, calling his name. He opened his eyes again quickly. Willow moved closer, her chin resting lightly against his thigh. Daniel let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Yeah, he whispered, I know. You can tell. Willow didn't move. She didn't urge. She just held the space with him, patient, steady, unwavering. Daniel stood again, brushing the dirt from his hands. I guess it's strange, he murmured. How something can feel so peaceful, and so heavy at the same time. Willow pressed her side gently against his leg, as if to say you don't have to choose between those feelings. Daniel smiled faintly. You always know the right moment to do that. The dog lifted her head, eyes warm and soft. They stayed there for a while, not speaking, just breathing. The morning light shifted, painting the ground in slow-moving shadows. Daniel took another step closer to the trunk. Willow rose and followed, her tail brushing the grass with a quiet sweep. He touched the bark this time. Not with certainty, but with acceptance. The texture felt rough beneath his fingers, grounding him in the present while pulling threads of memory from the past. When she was little, he whispered, voice low and uneven, she used to climb this tree even though I kept telling her she wasn't big enough yet. Willow sat again, looking up at him with gentle patience. Daniel's eyes softened, not breaking, but remembering. She'd get about halfway up, freeze, and call out for me to help her down. He let out a small laugh, breath shakier than he meant. And every time, I'd tell her, you didn't listen. He paused. And every time, I helped her anyway. Willow nudged his knee with her nose. Daniel took a slow breath, letting the memory unfold with less resistance this time. It didn't hurt the way it used to, sharp and sudden. Now it felt more like a bruise, tender, but healing. I haven't talked about her in a while, he admitted. Willow's head tilted gently, eyes full of understanding. Daniel ran a hand along her neck. You're good at this, he whispered. Better than people know. The dog leaned into his hand, allowing him to find comfort in the simple act of touch. The breeze grew warmer. The sunlight shifted. The weight inside him felt a little lighter, not gone, but shared. Daniel finally sat down beneath the tree, leaning back against the trunk. He felt Willow lie beside him, her body warm against his hip. It's strange, he said quietly. I walked past this tree every day and pretended it wasn't here. Like ignoring it would make everything easier. Willow rested her head on his thigh. But you, Daniel continued, you didn't ignore anything. He looked down at her. You saw me hesitating. You saw me avoiding it. You saw the way I changed when I got close. Willow blinked slowly, a soft, quiet affirmation. Daniel let his hand rest on her back. You knew I wasn't ready. But today, you decided I might be. The morning air hummed softly around them, the leaves above rustling in slow, calming rhythms. Daniel felt something shift inside him, a gentle loosening, like a knot coming undone one thread at a time. He could finally sit under this tree without collapsing inward. Without shutting down the moment the memories surfaced. And he knew without question that Willow's intuition had led him here for a reason. A reason he wasn't fully ready to face, but no longer terrified to approach. He whispered, "Thank you, Willow." Her tail swept the ground once, a small, gentle response. He leaned his head back against the trunk, closing his eyes. The sunlight warmed his face. The breeze cooled the back of his neck. And Willow's quiet breathing steadied the rhythm of his own. This wasn't the moment of truth yet. But it was a moment he needed, a moment he hadn't allowed himself to feel in the longest time. And as he sat beneath the old oak tree with Willow beside him, Daniel realized something essential. The dog wasn't just guiding him toward the place of his pain. She was guiding him toward the place where healing could finally begin. For a long moment, Daniel stayed seated beneath the oak tree, letting the familiar shape of the trunk settle into his back. Willow remained pressed gently against his side, her warmth steady, her breathing soft, almost syncing with his own. He didn't speak at first. He just let the quiet wash over him. But Willow lifted her head after a minute and looked toward the base of the tree, not the branches, not the shade, the ground. Daniel followed her gaze, brows drawing together. "What is it?" he whispered. Willow didn't move closer, not yet. She simply looked, waiting for him to notice something. Daniel leaned forward slightly, scanning the roots, the grass, the curve of the earth. At first it all looked like any other morning, sunlight slipping between branches, small leaves scattered across the soil, roots twisting through the ground like old stories carved into earth. But Willow looked with purpose. With intention. And Daniel knew her well enough by now to understand, she wasn't staring at nothing. She never did. He let out a soft breath. "You're trying to tell me something, aren't you?" Willow's tail gave one slow sweep, quiet, gentle, acknowledging. Daniel shifted onto his hands and knees, lowering himself to the ground with care. His fingers brushed through the grass, parting it slightly. The earth beneath felt cool, damp with morning dew. Willow stood and stepped forward, her nose close to the ground but not touching it. She circled once, twice, and then sat again in front of a spot between two roots. Daniel froze. Not from shock, but from recognition, the kind that arrives like a soft ache. That spot, his voice trailed off before he could finish. Willow nudged the earth once with her nose, then immediately backed up, not digging, not disturbing, just identifying. Daniel's breath trembled. "You remember this place too?" he whispered. Willow lowered her head gently, tail still. Daniel reached out a hand, brushing away a few fallen leaves. Beneath them, faint but unmistakable, was a small patch of uneven soil. Worn. Settled. Quiet. A place where something had once been placed with care. A small keepsake. A memory. Something left in love, and left behind because looking at it hurt too much. Daniel swallowed hard, his voice barely a breath. "I buried something here." Willow sat beside him again, her body close, grounding him through the tremor in his breath. He rested both palms against the earth. A warm wind drifted through the branches overhead, carrying a soft, rustling whisper. He felt Willow lean lightly against him. Not pushing him forward. Just letting him know she was here. Daniel blinked slowly. "How did you know?" Willow lifted her nose to his cheek and pressed it there gently, the faintest, warmest touch. It wasn't an answer in words, but it held meaning all the same. Daniel exhaled shakily. "You could sense it, couldn't you?" "The way I changed every time I looked out the window and saw this tree." Willow lay down beside him, chin resting on her paws, eyes soft but focused on the same patch of earth. Daniel reached out, letting his fingers rest on her back. Her fur felt comforting, almost like old memories held in warmth. "You've been watching me for weeks," he said quietly. "Every time I got quiet, every time I walked out here and stopped halfway," he paused. "You paid attention." Willow didn't move. She didn't need to. Daniel let his hand slide gently along her back. "You knew this was where I needed to be before I did." The breeze shifted again. A small leaf fluttered down and landed on the soil between the roots, soft, delicate, harmless. Daniel stared at it for a long moment. He wasn't breaking down. He wasn't running away. He was steady. More steady than he'd been in a long time. He whispered, "I thought avoiding this place would help." But all it did was keep the ache alive. Willow raised her head slightly, eyes meeting his, deep, warm, full of understanding. Daniel smiled, small but real. "You're a good girl." His voice cracked softly. "Better than I deserve some days." Willow gave a quiet exhale, a soft huff of breath that felt almost like reassurance. Daniel sat back, leaning against the tree again, letting his shoulders fall. He felt Willow lean into him once more, her body curved along his side like she'd been waiting for this moment. The warmth of her presence seeped into him slowly, gently, filling spaces he didn't realize had grown cold. He touched the ground again, fingers brushing the uneven soil where memories lay buried beneath. Not ready to uncover it. Not yet. Just ready to acknowledge it exists. And that was a change. A small one, but meaningful. Willow sensed it instantly. Her posture softened. Her breathing grew calmer. She rested her head on his thigh, her tail sweeping once in a slow, contented arc. Daniel looked down at her with soft eyes. "You really do know what you're doing, don't you?" Willow closed her eyes, sinking deeper into his touch. Daniel leaned his head back against the trunk, letting the sunlight filter across his face, letting the moment settle in his chest like a quiet truth. He wasn't healed yet. But something inside him had shifted, the beginning of something gentler, something braver. And Willow had been the one to bring him to this place. Not to reopen the wound, but to remind him that healing starts where pain was once left behind. And the dog's purpose, patient, intuitive, unwavering, had never been clearer. Daniel didn't move for a long time. He sat beneath the oak tree with Willow pressed gently against his side, her breathing slow, steady, almost meditative. The morning sun had risen fully now, warming the bark behind him and softening the shadows across the grass. Something about the moment felt different from all the others, quieter, but deeper. Like the world had settled into place around him. Willow sensed it too. She lifted her head slightly, her chin still resting on his leg, and watched him with those warm amber eyes that held more understanding than any spoken reassurance. Daniel exhaled slowly. His fingers brushed the uneven patch of earth again, this time without flinching. The memory didn't stab through him like before. It pressed, gently. He whispered, "I've been avoiding this for so long." Willow nudged his hand, a small, deliberate touch. Daniel felt his breath shake. "Yeah. I know," he murmured. "You knew before I did." He leaned forward a little, letting both hands rest against the dirt. The texture felt familiar, rough, cool, real. It grounded him. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just let his fingers move slowly through the grass, carefully parting it so he could see the soil beneath. And he realized. He wasn't afraid to look anymore. Willow moved closer, her front paws touching the edge of the root beside him. She watched his every breath, every shift, every hesitation, ready to offer comfort the second he needed it. Daniel's voice came out low, almost trembling. "I thought if I stayed away, it would hurt less." The breeze rustled the leaves overhead, soft, almost like a whisper answering him. He continued, each word careful, steady. "But the truth is, the pain didn't leave. It just waited here. Right where I left it." Willow placed her paw gently on his arm. Daniel froze, overwhelmed by the tenderness of that simple gesture. He placed his other hand over her paw, holding it lightly, as if afraid of disturbing the moment. "You're something else, you know that?" he whispered. Willow gave a slow blink, a dog's version of a reassuring smile. Daniel adjusted his posture, sitting a little straighter. Not tense, just ready. Ready in a way he hadn't been for months. He brushed away another small layer of leaves, revealing the faint outline of what he had buried long ago. A small piece of cloth peeking through the dirt, faded now, soft with time. His breath caught. "That's..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Willow leaned against him again, her body warm, steady, patient. Daniel swallowed hard. "I can't believe it's still here." The cloth held a memory too precious and too painful, something that belonged to a moment he once cherished and later struggled to face. He reached toward it, then hesitated. Willow sensed the tremor in his fingers and nudged his elbow gently, encouraging but not pushing. Daniel closed his eyes for one slow breath. Then another. When he opened them again, the world didn't feel as heavy. He whispered, "Okay. I'm here. I'm ready." He didn't uncover the cloth fully, not yet. He just laid his hand over it, feeling the shape through the earth, remembering the texture beneath his palm. And instead of breaking, he softened. His voice cracked softly as he spoke. "I miss her every day." Willow rested her head on his thigh again, pressing just a little harder, as if absorbing some of the weight from his chest. Daniel let out a long, trembling breath. This time, it sounded like release. Not collapse. Release. He leaned back against the tree again, eyes closing, letting the moment wash through him: grief, memory, love, and something new. Relief. Because for the first time since he buried that small piece of the past, he wasn't facing it alone. He whispered into the quiet. "Thank you, Willow. Thank you for bringing me back here." The dog answered with a soft, almost sigh-like breath, warming the space between them. Daniel looked at her. "You knew I needed this. You knew before anyone else even thought to ask." Willow wagged her tail once, slow, gentle, enough to say, "I'm here." Daniel reached out and scratched behind her ear, his hand steady. "You're not just a good dog," he said softly. "You're kind. You're patient. You're brave for both of us." Willow leaned into the touch, eyes closing with trust. Daniel looked over the patch of earth again. He didn't feel fear. He didn't feel resistance. He felt ready to keep going. Maybe not today, maybe not all at once, but he had taken the step that mattered. The emotional turning point had already happened. It happened the moment Willow guided him here. It happened the moment he allowed himself to sit with the memory instead of running from it. It happened the moment her quiet intuition helped him open the door he kept closed for so long. Daniel let out a final slow breath, warm and steady. "I'm going to be okay," he whispered. "For the first time in a long time. I believe that." Willow curled closer to him, tail brushing his leg. And beneath the old oak tree, wrapped in sunlight, memory, and the quiet bond between man and dog, Daniel felt something in him shift toward healing in a way he could finally accept. The turning point had come. And it was gentler than he ever imagined. Daniel didn't move for a while. He kept one hand resting over the faint outline of the cloth beneath the soil, his palm feeling its shape through the earth the way a memory presses gently into the mind, not sharp, not painful, just present. Willow lay close beside him, her head across his thigh, her presence steady and warm. Daniel inhaled, slow and deep. The breeze carried the faint scent of grass and sun-warmed bark. Somehow, it made everything feel softer. He brushed a few more leaves away, and this time he let his fingers sink a little deeper into the soil. Not enough to uncover anything fully, just enough to feel the truth of what lay beneath. A small tremor moved through his breath. "That day," he whispered. "It feels like yesterday, and also like a lifetime ago." Willow lifted her head, watching him closely. Daniel gave her a tired smile. "You want me to remember, don't you? To see what I buried here, instead of pretending it's gone." Willow nudged his arm, gentle, encouraging, patient. Daniel swallowed. His voice softened. It was her favorite scarf. The words hung in the air like delicate threads of memory. He traced the ground again, fingertips brushing the worn shape. She was so small, she'd wrap it around herself twice and still trip over the ends. A faint laugh, weak but warm, slipped out of him. She said it made her feel like a hero. Willow slowly lowered her head, resting it against his hip. Daniel closed his eyes as the memory unfolded: sunlight, laughter, the sound of tiny footsteps running around this very tree. He could almost see her spinning with the scarf trailing behind her, bright and full of life. His voice cracked softly. "She used to call this tree her tower. She'd climb it and tell me she could see the whole world from up there." He let out a breath that trembled but didn't break him. I buried the scarf here the day we said goodbye. I couldn't. I couldn't keep it inside the house. It hurt too much. Willow pressed her nose gently against his side, grounding him in the moment. Daniel's eyes softened. You knew there was something here, he whispered. You knew I was carrying something I never talked about. Willow gave a slow blink, calm, steady, full of quiet empathy. Daniel leaned forward, his hands resting fully on the soil now. The weight of sadness was still there. But something else had joined it. Warmth. Connection. A sense of being held not by the memory, but by the moment. He brushed more leaves away, revealing just a hint of faded fabric beneath the surface. He didn't uncover it completely, he didn't need to. Just seeing it, acknowledging it, letting himself feel it, was the beginning of healing? He whispered, I thought if I didn't look at it, I wouldn't feel the loss so deeply. He paused. But grief doesn't work like that, does it? Willow shifted closer, resting her paw on the ground beside his. Daniel looked at her, eyes warm, voice low. You brought me here because you could sense I wasn't healing. You felt the weight I kept hiding. You saw it every time I stood at the porch and stared at this tree. Willow's breathing matched his pace, slow, gentle, reassuring. Daniel let out a breath that felt like release. You weren't trying to make me relive the pain. He paused. You were trying to help me remember the love. The realization settled over him like sunlight breaking through clouds. This wasn't about reopening a wound. It was about reconnecting with something beautiful that grief had buried too deep. Daniel sat back against the tree, letting the moment wash over him. He rested a hand on Willow's back, his touch grateful, steady. You're remarkable, he murmured. And you don't even know it. Willow lifted her eyes to his, tail shifting once at a slow, gentle arc. Daniel continued, voice soft but stronger now. She would have loved you. She loved animals more than anything. He smiled faintly. She would have tied that scarf around your neck and told you that you were her knight. Willow huffed a small, warm breath, a comforting sound. Daniel wiped at the corner of his eye, not in sadness, but in something gentler. Something healing. He looked down at the patch of earth again. Not with dread. Not with avoidance. With tenderness. I think, he whispered, it's time I stopped pretending this part of my life didn't exist. He placed his hand over the soil, not to uncover, not to disturb, but to honor. Willow leaned into him again, her body curved protectively at his side. Daniel inhaled deeply. The air tasted less heavy. The morning felt different. And his heart, for the first time in a long time, felt open. She's not gone, he whispered. She's here, in the memories, in this tree, in every bit of love that still hurts because it meant so much. Willow closed her eyes, her presence a quiet echo of everything he couldn't say aloud. Daniel rested his forehead briefly against the tree trunk. Thank you, he whispered again. For bringing me here. For knowing what I needed before I knew myself. Willow's tail brushed the ground in a slow, peaceful sweep. And beneath the old oak tree where love once lived, where grief lingered, where healing finally began, Daniel realized the gentle truth. Willow hadn't led him to the pain. She had led him back to the love beneath it. Daniel remained seated beneath the oak for a long time, letting the moment settle around him like a soft blanket. The sunlight warmed him from above, the breeze carried the gentle whisper of leaves, and Willow curled at his side, her warmth anchoring him to the present, not the past. For the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. It felt earned. Daniel ran his hand slowly along Willow's back, feeling her steady breathing beneath his palm. You stayed with me through the hardest part, he whispered. You knew how to guide me here, without ever saying a word. Willow lifted her head and pressed it into his hand, a soft gesture that spoke louder than any human comfort. Daniel smiled, small but genuine. You're my brave girl. He let his gaze drift back to the patch of earth beneath the tree. It no longer felt like a wound. It felt like a place of remembrance, sacred, warm, gentle. A place where love still lived. He didn't need to uncover anything further. He didn't need to relive every memory. Just acknowledging it, being here, sitting with the truth instead of avoiding it, was healing in its own quiet way. The breeze shifted again, sending a few leaves drifting down toward them. One landed by Daniel's hand, its edges soft and golden in the light. He picked it up, studying the delicate veins. She used to collect leaves, he murmured with a faint smile. Every fall. She said they were like tiny treasures. Willow nudged his arm, as if agreeing that the memory mattered. Daniel rested the leaf gently atop the soil, a simple offering, a quiet tribute. Something inside him softened even more as he watched it settle into place. I thought coming back here would break me, he said. But instead, it's like something finally let go. Willow shifted closer, her body leaning fully against him now, not in concern, but in comfort, in kinship. Daniel wrapped an arm around her, grateful for the warmth, grateful for the presence that had guided him here with such delicate intuition. You're the reason I'm facing all this, he whispered. You're the reason it doesn't hurt the same way. Willow's tail brushed the ground once, slow, content. Daniel sat in silence again, allowing himself to feel everything without fear, the grief, the love, the memory, the letting go. Each emotion moved through him gently, like waves on calm water. After a while, he spoke softly. You know, maybe this tree doesn't have to be a place I avoid anymore. Willow raised her head, watching him with warm curiosity. Daniel rested a hand on the bark behind him. It can be a place I visit. A place to remember her. A place where good things still happen. He smiled down at Willow. Like you bringing me here? Willow let out a quiet breath, a soft sigh that seemed to say yes. This is what it was all for. Daniel stood slowly, brushing off his jeans. Willow rose with him, stretching her front paws forward in a long, gentle arch. He looked around the yard, familiar, warm, unchanged. But he felt different. Lighter. More open. More connected to the world around him. Willow circled once, then sat at his feet, looking up at him with a calm expression. Daniel reached down to scratch behind her ears. You ready to head back? She didn't move. Instead, she took one small step toward the tree, touched her nose lightly to the bark, then turned back to him with soft eyes, a gesture of acknowledgement, of respect. Daniel's heart warmed. You're saying goodbye, he murmured. Willow's tail gave a gentle sweep. He walked forward and placed his hand over the bark where her nose had been. A silent moment. A moment of gratitude. A moment of peace. Then he let his hand fall to his side. All right, he said softly. Let's go home. Willow walked beside him as they left the shade of the oak and stepped into the sunlight. The yard felt brighter now, not because the sun had changed, but because something inside him had. As they approached the porch, Daniel paused and looked back at the tree. This time, the sight didn't make his chest tighten. It made him breathe easier. He whispered, I'll come back. Not out of pain, but to remember. Willow looked up at him with warm approval. Daniel opened the porch door and stepped inside, Willow trotting gently behind him. The air in the house felt different too, lighter, clearer, as if the walls sensed the shift in him. He set a fresh bowl of water down for Willow. She drank, then lifted her head and nudged his leg affectionately. Daniel crouched down and wrapped his arms around her neck, holding her with gratitude he couldn't express in words. Thank you, he whispered into her fur. For helping me go back. For helping me feel again. For helping me heal. Willow rested her chin on his shoulder, a quiet embrace. Daniel stood again, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand, but smiling through the warmth. He walked to the window and looked out at the oak tree once more. He placed his palm against the glass, heart full. For the first time, the memory didn't feel like something heavy to carry. It felt like something precious to keep. And behind him, Willow sat with calm grace, knowing her job wasn't to fix him, but to guide him toward the place where healing waited. And she had done exactly that. With love. With intuition. With quiet, unwavering devotion.